There's a lot of oil on the
You can do
floor.
it if you like. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to pay for film. Thanks, Brian.
Fuck you.
Welcome back to Duels and Track. In this episode, we're going to build an engine. And we're going to start with saving a block.
You try and save this block.
Try and
This
save a
is
block.
some scores.
Some amount of scratches. There was a significant volume of honing here because there was some deep scratches in various places. There was also polishing on the sides where the pistons have obviously had a wee touchy polish session. But all of that is now out. We have removed a thou.
Yeah, well, when we measured this was right on the minimum sizing that Mazda recommend, which is good for us.
So what we did with that was we took one of the pistons that we're going to use, measured the width of that, decided how much gap Mazda recommended, then took that measurement to project on here, and then established that we were well within tolerance. This engine is actually tight to the pistons that need to go in it.
Yeah, because you're allowed a max of 2.3 thou.
Yeah.
And
We've honed it out.
Got it up to like just under 2.
Yeah.
And the scratches are all gone. So it's fine. It's still actually, you're allowed up to 6. It says max is 6.
Yeah.
So we've thought, well, it's going to be turboed. It's going to see a bit more heat than standard. So let's go
bit of thermal expansion.
a wee bit on the kind of tighter, but still within the factory spec. It's a wee bit of a looser fit, but
they all measure the same size. They're all nice and scuffed. It's weird when you say, "Oh, that's nice and not polished." That means it's good to go.
Yeah, but it is. All the scratches have come out, and it's still within the top side of the factory tolerance. So
we've got nothing more we can do to this. So next scene will be unboxing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
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 Let's split some pistons. Right, I might got a wee bit carried away there. So I've got 2 sets of 4 pistons, so 8 from a BP4W, which is the Mark II engine. So I split all of them. We'll measure them up and see which ones are the best. But remember, we also had the Mark I pistons. I split those, but I had reservations about using them because the engine has clearly been overheated, overhot. It's been roasted. So what we've found is further evidence of why that engine has not been used. Let me present to you case study 1. Now, piston rings, secondary, and the oil scraper rings, move. They're free. However, take a wee look at that primary. Now, my fingers are not holding that shut. Those are welded, basically roasted into place. So, long story short, they're for the bin. And that's not just limited to one piston, 2 of the 4 are like that. So if you ever overheat an engine, do not, for the love of God, think it's fine, I've just boiled up some coolant. Pretty good chance you've done some serious damage, as can be seen here. Right, let's start some measurements. We have done 2 forged engine builds on this channel, the Supra and the Primera. And on both of those, we went into excruciating detail on how to do it. I'm on a time crunch here, so instead we're going to speed run through what my measurements are, because measuring an engine before you build it is critical. So, this is the definition of a speed run. We've got 2 sets of pistons that came with the spares package in here. One set is a single digits, one set is a double digits. Single digits have a wide variety of sizes. The double digits, whilst in spec, are sitting more consistent, so we're going to go with the doubles. Next up, we measured the block bores. These have got a clearance between 83 and 83.019 as a tolerance. We've not specifically measured that, but we've looked at the piston 2-bore clearances, and our clearance sizes must be 0.066 to 0.025 in our tolerance. Double digit pistons, they actually sit perfectly within this size, so that's also good to go for the block. Next up, moving away from bores, we need to look at the clearances for the crank. We've also got 2 cranks, one of which has better polished bores, so we're going to go with that one. Measuring that size up, our spec sizes for this need to be 49.935 to 49.956. We're sitting 49.95 on the nose, and when we compare those sizes to the block, i.e. checking the clearances between the bores are in the block to what the crank bores are, we're sitting at 0.07 to 0.06 in our clearance tolerances. These are actually out with spec, but we've got an absolute hard limit of 0.1, so these still barely sit within this, and it's going to be good to use if a bit loose. Big ends we can't measure yet, and I'll get to that, it's because we don't have rods, but we do know the sizes of the crank, so we can actually save that and come back to clearances shortly. Next up, we need to look at rings. These are brand new and will be matched to the bore, so we don't need to worry about having the pistons to this. We only need to check rings against the bore. Our tops, our middles, and our oil rings, they all have to be matched exactly right. The book says for the tops, 0.15 to 0.3, the mids, 0.03 to 0.045, and the oils, 0.2 to 0.7. I have got these slightly higher because we want to be having an extra clearance because of the heat and the pressures that the turbo is going to run through the engine. So I've taken the top rings to 0.4 and the bottom rings to 0.5. I've yet to do the oils, we'll get to that shortly. Right, let's go and have a talk about building an engine. Every component that we're reusing, and I mean every component, has been thoroughly cleaned, jet washed out, blasted out with air, and then covered with oil. That is lubrication oil for building the engine with. We have cleaned down the crank that we're going to use. We have made sure all the bearings are nice, polished, and don't have any score marks on them. We have put the new shells in, and we have installed the crank, torquing up to the specification, which is 20 foot-pounds for the whole cycle, and then 43 foot-pound for the lock-in cycle. As we don't have rods, and I'll get to this, I have bought a set of forged rods for this a week ago, and Royal Mail have decided to park them in their Midland Super Hub and just hold them for a week. As a result, I have now panicked and I've bought a second set of rods. They are coming from Boffey and hopefully are going to arrive today, the following Saturday, although again they're getting shipped next day with Royal Mail, so place bets now. I am at a point where Every are probably slipping into the number 2 slot. Royal Mail are turning into the most disastrous courier on the planet. Anyway, I digress. We can still do things on this engine before the rods arrive, such as fitting the crank and assembling the lower areas that we don't need access to put rods into. So let's look at the oil pump. Now the engine's upside down, so, work with me here. The oil pump goes on here. It's driven by a keyway off the crank. It's just a gear within a gear that cycles as it goes and pumps oil up. So there'll be a pickup into the sump, and then this goes on here. There is a gasket that must be implied here, otherwise you get oil in at the timing belt, and that's not good. But one of the most important things if you're changing the oil pump is this. So you'll see here there's a channel that runs to the oil filter. That needs an O-ring, and it must be changed every time you do the oil pump. Forget that, and you lose oil pressure, you die in engine. So that has to be part of the gasket kit when you order it. So I'm going to reuse a known oil pump, not the one that came out the grenade engine, because that's probably going to have lots of debris in it. So we're going to use a different one that I know is good, but it's still used because that's about 250 quid, and really I know the one that I've got is alright, so we'll fire that on. Right, once that goes on, needs a new crank seal, and then we are good to go. Obviously we'll put a crank seal on the back on that parting as well, but I'll need the block off of the engine stand to do that. Once that's done, we'll do something else, I guess. That was £100. But I can't moan too much because with the exception of putting rods in this, I haven't really done anything to guarantee that this is going to be a better engine. And that's just, it's just not me. I need to go and mess with something. What I'm messing with here is the sump. So the standard sump has got a baffle plate. So the pickup sits down in here and all the baffle plate does is stop oil surging under cornering or braking and going out of the way of where the pickup is. Now, the standard one is to some degree effective because, well, the whole time I've had my MX5, I've never had an oil surge problem. And I do corner in it quite a bit and brake and accelerate. Where there is a design, there is an improvement. And what I have bought is a racing baffle sump kit. Now, the beauty of the MX5 is you don't need to do significant modifications to the sump to make this work. Old baffle out. So what the new baffle gives you is this bottom part. Now, what this does is it sits in like that, and you'll see that there's two wee windows. These wee guys, they basically act like one-way valves. So the oil can go into here, but under heavy braking can't easily get back out. So that keeps a volume of oil in where the pickup needs to be and stops it surging up to the front of the sump. This plate is also a bit of an upgrade because, as you can see, it sits in here and covers more of this area. Now, it doesn't completely block it off. You can still get volumes of oil down the side and crucially down the front of the pickup, but it does kind of inhibit it coming back out. So once it's in there, again, it stays in there. Now, there are arguments, obviously, that you're not getting as much oil into the pickup. That's countered by keeping a bit more in the sump. So, as long as you're miles away from the windage tray, which 5 litres generally speaking is, you should be good. Now, we'll probably put an extra ½ litre from what the book recommends in here, just to make sure that for racing conditions, it's in good fettle. Now, I'm going to bolt this back up, not without thread lock, because these can slacken off and probably cause big issues if they rattle about in here. So thread lock these up, and then we need to get the sump on, and then, well, I don't have much left to do. It's going to be days before this black comes out my fingers. Every day, a new level of carbonised oil on my fingers. But it's built, look, built. In fact, it's actually over-assembled. We've put things on this that'll just make things quicker once it goes in the car. So, engine done, that's us for this episode. So, in the next one, obviously we're going to chuck the clutch, flywheel, gearbox on, launch it in a car, and pray that I actually make it. We've got what, a week and a half?
That's plenty of time.
Week and a half before the race. So I'm sure we've in an MOT, we've got in an MOT.
Oh yeah, and you just need to drive it every day to try, to try and run it in.
Somehow, without an MOT. But yes, we've also not really touched on why this broke. And
why was this engine built?
Why have we had to do all this? Because we did work it out, but it's going to be delicate, so it's going to be Patreon only. So patreon.com/toolsandtrack, we're going to do a members only video explaining what went on here.
What happened to it?
So if that's for you, go have a look and find out the scandal. If it's not cool, just like, bell and subscribe because, you know, that helps. And until next week, which will inevitably be more MX5 videos because I've got to get something out of all this.
Made a lot of them.
Some videos. Yeah, until then, drive safe and don't melt a rod.
Yeah.